धा विनोद बिहारी जू की जाय। श्री गोविंद गोपीनाथ मरण मोहन जू की जाय। नित्यल प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद अश्वतर शत शिशुमार भक्ति वेदांत नारायण गोस्वामी महाराज श्री गुरुदेव की जाय। नित्यल प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद अश्वतर शत शिशुमार भक्ति वेदांत वामन गोस्वामी महाराज की जाय। नित्यल प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद अश्वतर शत शिशुमार भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी महाराज श्री प्रभुपाद की जाय। नित्यल प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद अश्वतर शत शिशुमार भक्ति प्रज्ञान केशव गोस्वामी महाराज की जाय। नित्यल प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद अश्वतर शत शिशुमार भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी प्रभुपाद की जाय। नित्यल प्रविष्ट महाभागवत श्री गौरकिशोर बाबाजी महाराज की जाय। नित्यल प्रविष्ट श्री सच्चिदानंद भक्ति विनोद ठाकुर की जाय। नित्यल प्रविष्ट वैष्णव सार्वभौम श्री जगन्नाथ दास बाबाजी महाराज की जाय। श्री रूपानुगौरीय गुरु वर्ग की जाय। श्री रूप सनातन भट्ट रघुनाथ श्री जीव गोपाल भद्रदास रघुनाथ शारद गोसाई प्रभु की जाय। श्री स्वरूप दामोदर राय रामानंदारी श्री गौर प्रसाद वृंद की जाय। नामचय श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जाय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासरी गौर भक्त वृंद की जाय। श्री क्षेत्र मंडल गौर मंडल व्रज मंडल मथुर वृंदावन धाम की जाय। सर्व अभिष्ट प्रदात गिरिराज महाराज की जाय। श्री राधा कुंड श्याम कुंड की जाय। श्री यमुना देवी गंगा देवी की जाय। श्री तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की जाय। श्री भक्ति देवी की जाय। श्री पूर्णमासी योगमाय की जाय। श्री गोपेश्वर महादेव की जाय। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जाय। श्री उद्धव-गीता की जाय। श्री विश्वनाथ चक्रवर्ती ठाकुर Sārārtha-darśinī वृत्ति की जाय। श्री भक्तिसिद्धांत सरस्वती गोसाई प्रभुपाद कोरिया भाष्य की जाय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जाय। समागत गौर भक्त वृंद की जाय। श्री निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। ओम ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमो ओं विष्णुपदाय राधिकाय प्रियात्मने श्रीमद्भक्तिवेदान्त नारायणीति नामिने। नमो ओं विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने। वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्य नाम्ने गौरत्विषे नमः। गुरवे गौरचन्द्राय राधिकायै तदालये कृष्णाय कृष्णभक्ताय तरभक्ताय नमो नमः। यं प्रव्रजन्तमनुपेतमपेतकृत्यं द्वैपायनो विरहकातर आजुहाव पुत्रेति तन्मयतया तरवोऽभिनेदुस्तं सर्वभूतहृदयं मुनिमानतोऽस्मि। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। शृण्वतं स्वकथा कृष्ण पुण्यश्रवणकीर्तन हृदन्तस्तो ह्यभद्राणि विधुनोति सुहृत्सतम्। नष्टप्रायेष्वभद्रेषु नित्यं भगवतसेवया भगवत्युत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। तवैवास्मि तवैवास्मि न जीवामि त्वया विना इति विज्ञाय राधे त्वां नायमां चरणान्तिकम्। भक्त्या विहीन अपराधलक्षाय क्षिप्ताष्टकामादितरङ्गमध्ये कृपामयि त्वां शरणं प्रपन्ना वृन्दे नमस्ते चरणारविन्दं। भज श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, everybody. Where is this computer camera? Haribol, everybody. So, if you were here yesterday, then you noticed that I am in Kolkata now. I'm going to be here for a week, or somewhere around there, and I'm not sure if you can hear. This mic is supposed to not get the noises from other sides, but maybe you can hear the cars and everything. I'm just right next to a gas station. That's where our mott is here, and I'm in the room with our Dadu, who chants every day. He chants 2 lakhs Harinam. He's been, that's all he does, all day, all morning and all night. Yeah, I lived with him for 6 years in Jagannath Puri. Very wonderful Vaishnav, disciple of Śrīla Gosvāmī Maharaj. So, I am pre-recording this video because this morning when I tried to go live, it kept on cutting out. And so, I'll come on when I start this video, this pre-recorded video, when it goes live. I'll come on to see everybody who's there, because yeah. And so, and one thing, I only have, with this service that I use, I only get 1 hour to stream, and so I have to pay careful attention to the time. I have to stop the video before 1 hour is finished, otherwise all that will get cut off. So I probably won't be able to sing Keshav Ashtakam. Alright, so let me where are we? Okay, so we're beginning chapter 15. And maybe we can just go do a recap of what we read yesterday and the day, like the 2 previous chapters. Okay. Okay, so Krishna spoke to Uddhava. Uddhava asked Krishna, how can one achieve devotional service through prescribed duties in the Varnashram system? Krishna declared how he is the origin of all Varnas, or social orders, that is the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras, and the Ashrams, or spiritual orders, that is the Brahmacharis, Grihastas, Vanaprasthas, and Sannyasis. He then described the qualities of people in different Varnas and the duties of people in different ashrams, and said, one is purified by undertaking his prescribed duties of Varnashram. When such duties are dedicated to me in loving service, they award the supreme stage of liberation. Now, the universal aspects of civilized life. Upon Uddhava's request, Lord Krishna prescribed the 12 types of disciplinary regulations, like non-violence, truthfulness, humility, etc., and also 12 types of regular duties, like cleanliness, chanting, austerity, visiting holy places, etc. That's yam and niyam. He also defined several terms like self-control, the greatest charity, and the greatest austerity, etc. After delineating many good and bad qualities, Krishna ultimately concluded that to maintain a worldly vision of good and bad is itself detrimental, and one must therefore aim to transcend both good and evil. And now the chapter that we just read, chapter 14, is Bhakti surpasses knowledge and detachment. Uddhava asked, how can one not refer to good and bad? How can one not refer to good and bad, or piety and sin? The Vedas give many instructions on piety and sin, what constitutes piety, what constitutes sin, and contain various prohibitions and recommendations. Krishna replied, there are three paths for perfection, namely jnana, karma, and bhakti. The qualification for jnana is detachment towards material life, and the qualification for karma is attachment to material pleasures. The qualification for bhakti is balanced detachment, and detachment, or yukta vairagya. Until one has developed sufficient detachment, or developed mature faith and taste in bhakti, one has to continue to act according to the Vedic injunctions discerning between good and bad. One should try to reach the platform of dutiful action without desiring enjoyment for their fruits. By this, one obtains knowledge or devotion. Thereafter, some way or the other, one must endeavor in his human birth to try to achieve the ultimate perfection. To this end, while the yogi fixed in knowledge has to make many endeavors to maintain his spiritual position, all the material desires of a devotee who constantly worships me are spontaneously destroyed. So the yogi has to make many endeavors to maintain his spiritual position. But the devotee who constantly worships the Lord, all their material desires are spontaneously destroyed. Bhakti is factually independent. Thus, for a devotee, knowledge and detachment are not means to achieve the highest perfection. Everything that can be achieved by any other process is easily achieved by my devotee through bhakti unto me. But my unalloyed devotees desire nothing besides me. They do not accept even liberation if offered by me. Material piety and sin cannot exist within them. They attain freedom from illusion and attain my abode. So now we're reading this chapter 15 about the Vedic path. This was a summary by Gauranga Darshan Prabhu. So now chapter 15, explanation of the Vedic path. Chapter summary. And actually I heard from Shivas that all the chapter summaries, it's called Katha Sar, is actually written by Srila Bhakti Pramod Puri Goswami Maharaj under Srila Bhaktisiddhānta Sarasvatī Goswami Prabhupāda. Yeah. Some people are unfit for practicing any of the three forms of yoga, karma, jnana, and bhakti. Such persons are inimical to Lord Krishna, attached to sense gratification, and are only interested in performing fruitive activities so that they can fulfill their material desires. This chapter describes their faults in terms of place, time, substance, and beneficiary of actions. Those who are perfect in knowledge and devotion to the Lord have no material good qualities or faults. They're beyond these. However, for one who is acting on the platform of karma in the hopes of transcending material existence, the execution of his prescribed duties is good, and the failure to do so is evil. Those activities that counteract sinful reactions are also considered to be good. When one is endeavoring to remain fixed in the mode of goodness, the cultivation of knowledge is always helpful. When one is engaged in the devotional service of the Lord, the 9 practices, beginning with hearing and chanting, are most beneficial. Everything that is detrimental to one's advancement in spiritual life should be avoided. However, for those who are simply interested in engaging in fruitive work with the aim of gratifying the senses, there are innumerable considerations of what is good and what is pious, and what is sinful. What is good and what is pious, and what is sinful. And what is purifying and what is contaminating. All of these must be carefully considered in terms of time, place, circumstances, and the performer of the work. Factually, virtue and fault are not absolute, but are relative to one's particular platform of advancement. Remaining fixed in the discrimination that is suitable to one's level of advancement is good, and anything contrary to that is bad. What was that? I'm just rereading this. Remaining fixed in the determination that is suitable to one's level of advancement is good, and anything contrary to that is bad. We should always act according to our level of advancement. This is the basic understanding of virtue and fault. Even among objects belonging to the same category, there are different considerations of their purity or impurity in relation to performance of religious duties, worldly transactions, and the maintenance of one's life. These distinctions are described in various scriptures. In the Varnashram society, there are very clear injunctions designating what is pure and what is contaminating. With regards to place, it is said that the presence of black deer is auspicious. Actions must be performed after considering time as well. Purity and impurity with regards to substances is exemplified by bathing, giving in charity, and performing austerities. The mind can always be purified by remembering the Supreme Lord. There are also distinctions of purity and impurity regarding the performers of activities. When a mantra is received from the lips of a bona fide spiritual master, it is considered pure, and all work, as well as all objects, are considered purified by being offered to the Supreme Lord. For the execution of religious principles, these 6 factors must be considered in terms of purity and impurity. Ultimately, there is no fixed standard by which to make distinctions of virtue and fault, because they transform according to the place, time, beneficiary, and so on. In regard to the execution of prescribed duties for sense gratification, the actual intent of all the scriptures is the subduing of materialistic propensities. This is the actual principle of religion, because only this destroys sorrow, confusion, and fear, and bestows all good fortune. Work performed for sense gratification is not actually beneficial. The descriptions of such fruitive benefits described in the sections of the Vedic literature known as Phalashruti are actually meant to help one gradually cultivate a taste for the highest benefit. Yeah, the fruits are not actually why we're doing these things. It's to give us some motivation, to attract us to performing the different prescriptions. Unfortunately, those possessing inferior intelligence take the flowery benediction verses of the scriptures to be the actual purport of the Vedas. However, this opinion is never upheld by those who factually know the truth of the Vedas. Those whose minds are agitated by the flowery words of the Vedas have no attraction for hearing discussions of Lord Hari. It should be understood that there is no inner purports to the Vedas apart from the original personality of Godhead. The Vedas focus exclusively upon the supreme absolute truth, the personality of Godhead. Because this material world is simply the illusory energy of the Supreme Lord, the Vedic literature always recommends that one become aloof from the material association the Vedic literature always recommends that one become aloof from material association by becoming attached to the absolute truth. I'm going to do something very quickly, just to make sure that I don't go over time. So far I've been reading for 17 minutes. Alright, so I'm going to set a timer for myself so that I don't go over time. I'll make this go for 40 minutes. 42 minutes, right? There. Alright, now I have a timer set. Okay, so now we will begin chapter 15. Hopefully everything's working good and I'm not wasting my time. Okay. Here, why don't I face this way then? Yeah. Okay. Okay, and we're going to read up to verse... Well, let's see how far we get, but I wanted to read up to verse 22. Text 1. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Ya etan mat pato hitva bhakti jnana kriyatmakan kshudran kamangsh chalai pranair jushanta sangsarantite. The Supreme Lord said, "Those who will not follow the paths of devotional service, speculative knowledge, and fruitive activities as prescribed by me, and simply work to fulfill their insignificant material desires, will certainly continue in the cycle of repeated birth and death." Wow, that's really loud. Anyways, Maybe I should move into a different place. Anyways, I'm just going to continue. It stopped. Okay, great. Okay, let me just reread that. Those who will not follow the paths of devotional service, speculative knowledge, and fruitive activities as prescribed by me, and simply work to fulfill their insignificant material desires, will certainly continue the cycle of repeated birth and death. Sārārtha-darśinī commentary by Śrīla Viśvanātha Cakravartī Ṭhākura. Here, Lord Krishna condemns those who simply work hard for achieving sense gratification without any care for spiritual advancement. Devotional service places one directly under the shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whereas cultivation of speculative knowledge leads one to the impersonal Brahman conception of the Absolute Truth. By executing one's duties without attachments to the results, one also becomes detached from fruitive desires. In contrast, those who work hard in the hopes of ruling a kingdom or enjoying celestial delights will certainly continue on the path of material existence. Now, Gauḍīya Bhāṣya commentary by Śrīla Bhaktisiddhānta Sarasvatī Gosvāmī Prabhupāda. Those who renounce the paths of performing fruitive activities without attachment, cultivating transcendental knowledge, and devotional service are certainly uncontrolled, and thus take pleasure in gratifying their insignificant desires for sense gratification. Unalloyed devotional service is certainly superior to devotional service mixed with karma and devotional service mixed with jnana. That's karma mishra bhakti and jnana mishra bhakti. Oops. Where there is no tinge of devotional service, there is only desire for sense gratification, or the desire for renouncing sense gratification. Those whose aim is either material enjoyment or impersonal liberation cannot gain ultimate freedom from the cycle of repeated birth and death. Oh, I think this is a famous verse. Yeah, this is a famous verse. What? I think. Sve sve dhikarya nishta saguna parikirtita viparyayas tudoshasyar ubhayor esha nishchaya. To remain fixed in one's position is known as piety, or a good quality, and to deviate from one's position is known as impiety, or a fault. This is how piety and impiety should be ascertained. Yes, I've seen this verse many times. This is an important verse. Sārārtha-darśinī. Sri Uddhava said, "My dear Lord, I had asked you how one can determine good qualities and faults. You had replied by saying that to find fault with your devotee was itself a fault. But what if a devotee appears to be faithfully engaged in your service, but somehow or other comes under the influence of karmis or jnanis, and thus deviates from his engagement in pure bhakti? Is it a mistake to find fault in such a devotee? What about a person who is neophyte in spiritual life, but after coming in contact with a pure devotee, decides to imitate such an exalted soul? If one prematurely gives up his occupational duties, thinking that he is situated on the liberated platform, although he is still in the bodily conception of life, isn't that also to be considered as faulty?" In reply to this inquiry of Uddhav, the Lord said, "The characteristics of faults and piety can be understood in this way. To remain fixed in one's natural position is always to be considered a good quality. Occasionally, a neophyte devotee may become polluted by the association of those engaged in fruitive activities and mental speculation, so that he becomes affected by mundane tendencies. Similarly, an ordinary person who observes the exalted status of a pure devotee sometimes externally imitates his activities, considering himself to be on the same exalted platform of pure devotional service. These imperfect practitioners of bhakti yoga are not exempt from criticism because their fruitive activities, mental speculation, and false prestige are material intrusions in the pure loving service of the Lord." Interesting. A pure devotee engaged exclusively in the Lord's service should not be criticized. But a devotee whose devotional service is mixed with material qualities may be corrected so that he can rise to the platform of pure devotional service. Wow, this is an important point. Let me reread that. A pure devotee engaged exclusively in the Lord's service should not be criticized, but a devotee whose devotional service is mixed with material qualities may be corrected so that he can rise to the platform of pure devotional service. Now, Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. One's faithfulness to his particular status is to be considered one's good quality. If, due to restlessness, one tries to imitate the position of another, that is to be understood as a fault. Different processes of self-realization exist because of people at various stages of development. When one who is engaged in the devotional service of the Lord exhibits a spirit of enjoyment or a propensity for dry renunciation, his position is faulty. When one accepts a position that is favorable for his advancement in life, that is to be considered a good quality. Whereas when one accepts a position that is unfavorable for his advancement, that is a fault. So that's how we should see everything. We should see everything in relation to what helps me advance in bhakti. And anything that's helpful for that is a good quality. Anything that is not is a bad quality. That is a fault. Shuddha shuddhi vidhiyete samaneshvapi vastushu dravyasya vichikitsartham guna dosho shubho dharmartham vyavaharartham yatrartham iti chanagha. O sinless Uddhav, to understand what is proper in life, one must evaluate everything, such as religious principles and considerations of economic development, in terms of its purity and impurity. Even in ordinary dealings, one must be able to distinguish between good and bad. As a matter of survival, one must be able to distinguish between that which is auspicious and that which is inauspicious. Sārārtha-darśinī. Here, the Lord is further describing the necessity for considering qualities and faults. Uddhav has presented his doubt, and the Lord will remove it. Every doubt can be removed by good instruction, just as mosquitoes can be removed by smoke. Every material object has its good qualities or faults. For example, bustuck spinach is considered pure, whereas kalami spinach is considered impure. In this way, the faults and good qualities, or the piety and impiety, must be considered in all aspects of practical life. The same principle also applies to religion, as well as all kinds of ordinary dealings. Even though one who is well situated in terms of good behavior comes from a lower class family, he should be considered a superior person due to his possessing good qualities. There are also auspicious and inauspicious times to be considered while beginning a journey. Although accepting charity from an inappropriate person is a fault, in an emergency or to save one's life, one may accept whatever is required. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. Whether in ordinary dealing, religious practices, or basic survival, one cannot avoid making a distinction between good and bad. Religious principles must be followed for the upkeep of society, and for this purpose, there must be a correct ascertainment of what is piety and what is sin, what is pure and what is impure. It is practically seen that everyone makes such distinctions with regards to food, residence, associates, and so on. Just to ensure one's survival, one must distinguish between that which is healthy and that which is injurious, and that which will be profitable and that which will result in disaster. Thus, it is to be concluded that even a wise man must distinguish between that which is favorable and that which is unfavorable in this material world, while at the same time understanding the transcendental position above the dualities of material existence. Darshito yam mayacharo dharmam udvahatam dhuram. I have revealed these methods for making distinctions for those who bear the burden of maintaining mundane religious principles. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. Materialistic persons who are attached to enjoying the results of their activities must constantly consider the purity and impurity, the vice and virtue, and good qualities and faults of their actions, of all their actions. Transcendentalists are not confined to such material conceptions, however. In this regard, one should discuss these two verses from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Krishna bhaktira bhadaka jata shubha shubha karma seho eka jivera agyana tamo dharma dvaite bhadra gyan saba mano dharma ei bhalo ei mandha saba brahma. All kinds of activities, both auspicious and inauspicious, that are detrimental to the discharge of loving devotional service to the Lord Krishna, are actions of the darkest ignorance. Are actions of the darkness of ignorance. And then there's this. That's from Adi Lila 194. In the material world, conceptions of good and bad are all mental speculations. Therefore, saying this is good and this is bad is all a mistake. That's Antya Lila, chapter 4, verse 176. Bhumyam vagnyanilakasha bhutanam pachadhautava abrahma Stavaradinam Sharira Atma Sangyutaha. Move this down. Earth, water, fire, air, and ether are the 5 gross elements emanating from the Supreme Lord that make up the bodies of all conditioned souls, from Lord Brahma down to the most insignificant blade of grass. Sārārtha-darśinī. The varieties of good qualities and faults are understood from the authority of the Vedic literature. The Vedic literature makes such distinctions to help the conditioned souls on their gradual march towards progress in spiritual life. Earth, water, fire, air, and sky are the 5 material elements. These are the primary ingredients of the gross material bodies of all living entities, up to the standard of Brahma. Vedena namarupani vishamani sameshvapi dhatu shuddhava kalpyanta etesham sārārtha-siddhaye. My dear Uddhav, although all material bodies are constituted of these same 5 elements, different names are given so that one can distinguish between them, and thus advance towards life's ultimate goal. Sārārtha-darśinī. Although the bodies of all conditioned souls are made of the same 5 gross material elements, they are designated by various names and forms. The Vedic literature takes into account such varieties and classifies human society in terms of varna and ashram. Thus, someone is a brahmana, someone else is a brahmachari, another person is a betel nut merchant, and still another is an oil merchant. One may question, what is the need for such diversity? The answer is that the Vedic system is designed by the Lord so that conditioned souls may pursue their individual achievements and at the same time advance toward the ultimate goal of life, Krishna consciousness. Deshakaladi bhavanam vastunam mama sattama guna dosha vidhiyete niyamartam hi karmanam. O foremost of devotees, in order to regulate the activities of the living entities, I have imparted the understanding of that which is good and that which is bad in relation to time, place, and objects. Sārārtha-darśinī. In the previous verse, the Lord explains why the Vedic literature assigns different positions to the various bodies of the living entities. In this verse, the Lord explains the Vedic evaluation regarding the entities that interact with the various classes of material bodies. The purpose of the Vedic literature is to restrict the sinful propensities of human beings by establishing proper behavior for all classes of men and defining what is improper with regards to time, place, and the objects of this world. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. A conditioned soul falsely identifies with the gross body and thus considers anything that gives immediate satisfaction to the body to be good, and anything inconvenient or disturbing for the body to be bad. By higher intelligence, however, one can recognize one's long-term self-interest and dangers. By designating and restricting the exploitation of the material world, Vedic knowledge gradually brings a conditioned soul to the platform of material goodness. At that stage, one becomes eligible to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Akrishna saradeshanam abhramanyo suchir bhavet Krishna saro pyaso vira ki kata samskriterinam. Those places where there are no spotted deer, where respect is not given to the brahmanas, where general cleanliness and the purificatory rites of Vedic society are neglected, where meat eaters predominate, and where the earth is barren, such as Kikata, are to be considered as contaminated. Sounds like Kolkata, where I am right now. Sārārtha-darśinī. In these 8 verses, Sri Krishna describes the purity and impurity of objects, places, and times. The word Krishnasara means spotted deer. Among countries, those where there are no spotted deer are considered to be impure. Besides this, any country where the inhabitants do not show respect to the brahmanas is considered most impure. Countries where the people are uncivilized are asovira, which are inhabited by mlechas, and where food grains do not grow because the land is barren, are considered impure. Kikata refers to the province of Gaya. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. While living at the Gurukul, brahmacharis dress in the hide of spotted deer. It is required to wear this during the period of learning about sacrifice. The skin of the black or spotted antelope is also used as a garment by those receiving instruction in the execution of Vedic sacrifice. Therefore, since sacrifice cannot be properly performed in areas bereft of such creatures, these places are considered impure. Even if people are advanced in terms of pious activities and the performance of sacrifice, their country is considered to be impure if they are averse to the devotional service of the Supreme Lord. When there was no respect for devotional service to Lord Hari in countries such as Anga, that's Bihar, and Banga, Bengal, they were counted as impure. However, after the appearance of great Vaishnavas such as Sri Jayadev Gosvāmī, they have been glorified by the scriptures for their purity, even though they were also considered impure because of not having spotted deer. Karmanyo gunavan kalo dravyata svata eva va yato nivartate karma sadosho karmakha smrita. A time is considered to be auspicious when it facilitates the execution of one's prescribed duties, and that time which obstructs the execution of one's prescribed duties is considered inauspicious. Sārārtha-darśinī. Now, the purity and impurity of various times is being explained. Any time that is suitable for executing one's prescribed duty is considered to be pure. The time where one obtains the ingredients necessary for performing one's work is considered pure by nature. The most auspicious time for performing karma yoga is before noon. When a woman gives birth to a child, she is considered to be impure for a certain amount of time, right? Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. As there's consideration of purity and impurity with regards to place, there is also consideration of purity and impurity with regards to time. The time when one obtains the ingredients for performing one's occupational duty and the time which is spent for performing pious activities are naturally auspicious. Any time or condition that impedes the performance of one's occupational or religious duty must be considered as most inauspicious. The most auspicious of all times is the moment one achieves the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If one neglects the loving service of the Lord, being carried away by sense gratification, he is certainly living in most inauspicious times. Therefore, that moment in which one achieves the association of the Supreme Lord or the Lord's pure devotee is the most auspicious times, whereas the moment of losing such association is most inauspicious. That's really nice. Dravyasya shuddha shuddhi vacha dravyena vachanena cha samskare natakalena mahatvalpatayatava. An object's purity or impurity is established by contact with another object, by words, by rituals, by the effects of time, or according to its magnitude. Sārārtha-darśinī. Here, purity and impurity is being explained. The purity of pots is attained by washing them with water, and they become impure. The words of a saintly Brahmana are pure, but the sound's vibration of a materialistic person is contaminated by lust and envy. After the birth of a child or the death of a family member, the next 10 days are considered to be impure. Water fetched by an outcast is considered to be pure if it is from a large lake filled with lotus flowers. However, if it is brought from a small pond or well, it is considered to be impure. Impure food in the mode of ignorance is certainly to be avoided, except in the case of a dire emergency. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. The consideration of an article's purity or impurity is determined by its proximity to other things. For example, articles touched by urine are considered to be impure, but if they are touched by Ganges water, they are considered to be pure. Although the conch shell is the bone of a dead animal, it is accepted as pure because the Vedas declare this as being a fact. Purity and impurity also depends on samskar, indicating that the purity or impurity of a particular object is ascertained according to the regulations of ritualistic performances. For example, a flower to be offered to the deity must be purified with water. Flowers of food cannot be offered to the deity. However, if they have been contaminated by being smelled or tasted before the offering. Shaktya tattva buddhya samriddhya cha yaratmane agham kurvanti hi yatha deshavasthanusarataha. The contact of contaminated substances may or may not affect one with sinful The contact of contaminated substances may or may not affect one with sinful contamination, depending on one's prowess, spiritual advancement, development of intelligence, and other such conditions. Wow, this is really nice. It's such a nuanced subject. What is considered all these things. What is considered good, bad, contaminated, not contaminated. It all depends upon one's prowess, spiritual advancement, all these things. Sārārtha-darśinī. According to the laws of nature, that which is impure contaminates a particular person in accordance with that person's situation, as described here. For example, on certain occasions, such as a solar eclipse or just after childbirth, one must restrict the intake of food according to ritualistic injunctions. One who is physically weak, however, may eat without being considered impious. Ordinary persons consider the 10 days following childbirth to be most auspicious, whereas one who is learned knows that this period is actually impure. Worn, dirty clothing is considered impure for a rich man, but acceptable for one who is poor. The word desha indicates that in a safe and peaceful place, one is obligated to strictly perform religious rituals, whereas in a dangerous or chaotic situation, one may be excused for occasional negligence of secondary principles. One who is physically healthy must offer obeisances to the deities, attends religious functions, and execute his prescribed duties. But a young child or sickly person may be excused from such activities, as indicated by the word avasta. Thus, the revealed scriptures teach that one should consider purity and impurity according to the place, time, person, and circumstances. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. The difference between purity and impurity, as well as piety and impiety, depends upon the place, circumstances, health of a person, and prosperity. One should accept everything which is favorable for the devotional service of Lord Krishna and reject whatever is unfavorable. One must learn the process of serving God from the bona fide spiritual master, and thus always maintain one's existence pure and free from anxiety. In general, however, when considering the relative purity and impurity of material things, all of the above-mentioned factors must be calculated. It can thus be concluded that the same conditions are perceived differently by swan-like personalities, and those who are no better than It can thus be concluded that the same conditions are perceived differently by swan-like personalities, and those who are no better than hogs, dogs, camels, and asses. Dhanya darvasti tantunam rasatai jasa charmanam kala vaivagnimrittoyai partivanam yutai. Various objects such as grains, wooden utensils that are used for performing sacrifice, elephant tusks, liquid items such as oil and ghee, metal such as gold, leather, and clay pots. All of these items can be purified by contact with time, air, fire, earth, and water. Sārārtha-darśinī. The Lord herein explains in detail how various articles become pure by contact with certain elements. The word asti refers to elephant's tusks. The word rasa in this verse refers to oil or ghee. The word taijasa refers to gold and other metals. All these are considered to be pure according to Shastra when they are combined with water, fire, and other elements and used at a particular time. For example, a clay pitcher and bricks are considered pure, but when they are in their original form as earth, they are considered impure. Metals, such as gold, can be purified by clay, water, and fire. Raw silk is purified simply by contact with the air. Amedya liptam yadyena gandalepam vyapolhati bhajate prakritim tasya tachchocham tavarishyate. If a surface, a container, or cloth is contaminated by the touch of an abominable object, it can be purified by cleansing with caustic soda, acid, and water until the smell or dirt is completely removed. Sārārtha-darśinī. If meat or any other abominable substance is kept on a surface, a cloth, or in a pot, then these can be purified by scrubbing and washing with acid, detergent, clay, and water until the contamination is removed. One should cleanse a contaminated object until the bad odor or impure coating is removed, thereby restoring it to its original condition. Snāna-dāna tapovasta virya samskara karmabhi matsmritya chatmana shocham shuddha karma chare dvija. One can purify the self by bathing, giving charity, performing austerity, undergoing purificatory rituals, as well as by personal prowess, the performance of prescribed duties, and above all, remembrance of me. One who is twice born should purify himself before he engages in prescribed duties. Sārārtha-darśinī. After explaining how various objects can be purified, the Lord now describes the means for purifying the self. One can purify himself by bathing, distributing charity, and performing the activities that are prescribed for his various stages in life. The word samskar means rituals, such as the sacred thread ceremony and the chanting of mantras. It is necessary for the members of all varnas to purify themselves before performing their prescribed duties. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. The conditioned souls can purify themselves by bathing, giving charity, performing austerity, acting according to the rules and regulations prescribed for his situation within the varnashram system, undergoing 15 kinds of samskar, and above all, by remembering the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord Vishnu. In this regard, one should carefully consider this verse from the Garuda Purana. Apavitra pavitro va sarvavastam gatopi va yasmarit pundarikaksham sabhyabhyantare suci. Whether one is impure or contaminated, and regardless of one's external situation, simply by remembering the lotus-eyed personality of Godhead, one can internally and externally cleanse one's existence. Mantrasya cha parigyanam karma shuddhir mararpanam dharma sampadyate sharbhir adharmastu viparyaya. A mantra is purified when it is heard from the mouth of a bona fide spiritual master. One's activities are purified by offering the results to me. Purified place, time, ingredients, performer, mantras, and actions constitutes religion, and negligence of these six constitutes irreligion. Sārārtha-darśinī. The purification of a mantra is being described in this verse. When mantras are received from the mouth of a bona fide spiritual master, they are considered purified. One's activities are purified when the results are offered in the service of the Supreme Lord. Purification of the place, time, ingredients, performer, mantras, and action constitutes religion, and a failure to do so So purification of the place, time, ingredients, performer, mantras, and action constitutes religion, and failure to so purify constitutes irreligion. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. The purification of place, time, ingredients, performer, mantra, and action constitutes religion, and the negligence of such purification is considered irreligion. If one does not receive a mantra from a bona fide spiritual master who exhibits purified behavior, then he falls into a state of inauspiciousness, because a mantra is no better than poison when it is received from a so-called spiritual master who is actually a disciple of Kali. When actions are performed for one's own sake, or for the sake of one's family or community, they are considered to be impure. Anyways, okay. Whenever an action, time, place, and so on are not in relation to the Supreme Lord, they must be considered impure and irreligious. Oh, okay, that makes sense. There's a beautiful song by Śrīla Ṭhākura. How does it go? Forgot it. Amara Bolite Prabhu. And that song is explaining this point. So it doesn't mean that you don't do anything for the sake of your family or community and like that, but it should always be in relation to the Supreme Lord. Not that you just solely do it for your family. You're doing it ultimately for the Supreme Lord. And that kirtan is beautiful kirtan if you want to develop that propensity. Amara Bolite Prabhu. Kvachir guno pidoshyasyar doshopi vidhina guna guna doshartha niyamas tarbhidam eva badhyate. Sometimes what seems to be piety is actually sin, and sometimes what normally is sinful is to be considered as pious. Because of this, it seems that there is no clear distinction between piety and sin. Sārārtha-darśinī. Here it is explained that piety and sin are actually relative conceptions. If a man abandons his wife and children, he must certainly be considered a rascal number one. Still, when a man gives up his family to accept the renounced order of life, sannyas, he is offered the respect due to a great soul. It must therefore be concluded that piety and sin depends upon circumstances, and are therefore not easily ascertained. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. Human beings are considered to be capable of distinguishing between good and bad, and are thus responsible for their pious and sinful activities. Animals, on the other hand, being merged in ignorance, cannot be blamed for their offenses, which arise from ignorance. Human beings who act like animals, with the idea that one should not feel any guilt, but should do whatever he likes, will certainly take birth as animals, absorbed in ignorance. Samana karma charanam patitanam napatakam otpatiko gunasango nashayana patatyadha. Activities that would degrade an elevated person do not cause a fall down for those who are already fallen. Indeed, one who is lying on the ground cannot possibly fall any further. The material association that is dictated by one's own nature is considered a good quality. For example, association with a woman is a fault for a person in the renounced order of life, but it is a good quality for a householder. Sārārtha-darśinī. Oh, and we should end. How long have I been reading for? Let me check. 57 minutes. Oh my god. Okay, I'm going to quickly end after this. For an elevated person, drinking wine would be the cause of his degradation, but an ordinary laborer who could moderate his drinking would be considered pious. From this example, we can understand that on the material platform, piety and sin are relative. Another example is that if a sannyasi intimately associates with a woman, he would be considered most abominable, whereas that same association for a householder is considered pious. The conclusion is that piety and sin on the material level are relative considerations. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. For one who is full of faults, his actions cannot be the cause of his degradation, because they are natural for him. One who is lying on the floor cannot go any lower. The possibility of falling down looms large for those who are elevated, but not for those who are already fallen. The nature of a talented person is never considered to be faulty. Because transcendentalists know that sense enjoyers and dry renunciates are fallen, they are careful to avoid their association or imitate their behavior. Alright, so I'm going to do a very quick Jaidvani and ends before an hour is up, otherwise I won't be able to post this video. So, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Gaur Hari Bol. Jai Shri Sachinandan Gaur Hari Ki Jai, Shri Radha Vinod Bihari Ju Ki Jai, Jai Srila Gurudev Ki Jai, Jai Srila Param Gurudev Ki Jai, Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Shri Rupanu Gauriya Guru Varga Ki Jai, Saparshad Shri Gaur Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai, Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopigan Ki Jai, Shri Giriraj Maharaj Ki Jai, Shri Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Shri Hari Nam Sankirtan ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Shri Nitai Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bo. Vrindai Tulsi Devai Priyai Keshavashacha Krishna Bhakti Pradadevi Satyavataya Namo Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhuve Vacha Patitanam Pavanivo Vaishnavivo Namo Namaha. See you tomorrow. Hari Bo.